I usually do not lean to drama in news, but allow me this once. Remember the very famous dialogue from a movie many regarded as path-breaking cinema, at least for Bollywood. Taapsee Pannu starrer Thappad. In that movie, one of the dialogues was, "Usne mujhe mara pehli baar, nahi maar sakta, bas itni si baat hai aur meri petition itni si hai." Jammu and Kashmir High Court today ruled that a husband slapping a wife in public will not attract offence of outraging a woman's modesty under Section 354. In this particular case, and context is also very important, so just for that purpose, the husband and wife had certain matrimonial disputes pending between the two. The wife claimed that when she had arrived at the family court to attend a hearing in a matrimonial dispute, she was publicly slapped and injured by her estranged husband. Trial court allowed proceedings against the husband, but the J&K High Court quashed the trial, said no offence was made out under Section 354 IPC on account of the man allegedly slapping his wife in public. However, the court said that an offence under Section 323 of IPC for voluntarily causing hurt could be attracted. Now, what is Section 354 of the IPC? It says whoever assaults or uses criminal force against any woman intending to outrage her or knowing it to be likely that he will thereby outrage her modesty shall be punished with imprisonment of either description of a term that may extend to 2 years or a fine or both. So it's basically outraging the modesty of a woman. But the court in this particular case said they can go for Section 323 of the IPC. Now, what is Section 323? It states that whoever voluntarily causes hurt to any person shall be punished, and there are certain punishable offences, punishments that have been specified. I'm being joined right now by Karuna Nundy, Advocate Supreme Court. We'll try to get her line patched in a bit, as well as Deepika Narayan Bhardwaj, who's a documentary filmmaker. Deepika, how do you look at what's happened in the court today?
Sneha, I think the J&K court has made an absolutely right observation. You have to punish a person or an individual as per the crime that is prescribed by the law. 323 is absolutely the right provision that is attracted over here. I think you have completely missed out the point. Just making allegations, first of all, does not mean that that specific crime has occurred. Second, the court has specifically observed that there were no witnesses who were actually taken on record for this public thrashing which has been alleged. 323 has been taken cognizance of, and 354 in a larger perspective as a crime is looked at from a sexual harassment point of view, and that's why I believe is the reason for the High Court's order.
Right. Now, irrespective of who slaps, how is one supposed to see which section is drawn in? I'm trying to understand here. Why 323 and not 354? Why not outraging the modesty of a woman? I'm also being joined by Karuna Nundy. I'm told she's being just patched, but Deepika? All right, I'm being joined by Karuna Nundy. Karuna, you know, one question that really comes up to my mind, and here I just want to lay it very straight. We are trying to understand the legal lens of how to view cases such as this, and it's very important for men and women to understand this, irrespective of their age and irrespective of their marital status. Karuna Nundy, would you help us to understand why is a wife being slapped in public not outraging the modesty of that woman?
That's a very good question, Sneha, because what you're looking at is the bare words of the statute, right? Because you're saying that it's humiliating. It's something that no person should do to another person, leave alone a husband to his wife. So that's the context that you're coming from. In fact, when we were looking at the Criminal Law Amendment Bill of 2013, and when many of us contributed to it, we sought to remove that very archaic language, outraging the modesty, because it leads to this exact kind of confusion. Now, the thing is that what the legislature really meant when they were speaking of outraging the modesty, this very Victorian language, is for better or for worse, what they meant was sexual assault, right? Now, sexual assault has a very specific meaning, and let us be clear that husbands are not exempt from 354. However, to the extent that the slapping and the hitting did not constitute sexual assault, and it doesn't sound like it did, then 354, for better or for worse, then does not apply. 323 does apply. However, and so to that extent, the judge is not wrong. But we also need to be clear that when we look at crimes like these, the context must be looked at, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to look at whether this was also any willful conduct which is of such a nature as it is likely to drive the woman to commit suicide, which maybe it didn't because there's no evidence of that, or to cause grave injury or danger to life, limb, or health. Now, this could be mental health. Is there any grave danger to her mental health? So what her lawyer should be doing if this husband is, if the prosecution goes forward, or rather what the public prosecutor should be doing, is to adduce evidence to demonstrate, if this is true, that her mental health is being damaged from being beaten in public. Right? In which case, Section 498A
so you are saying
must
that
apply.
354 actually... Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so you are talking about
No,
498A
but
being
Sneha, I
applied.
also want to be clear. I just also may clarify for the purposes of everyone watching this program that just because a particular section has not been cited either at the stage of the FIR or even if the case has gone up to the High Court and one section has been confirmed and the other quashed, it doesn't mean that an additional section can't be added later because the evidence has come up. In fact, there is a judgment of the Supreme Court of only a couple of years ago that says that even at the end of a trial, when final arguments are being made, should it appear to the judge that the facts in question have been put to the accused, and of course the rights of the accused are important, the opportunity of the accused to prove their innocence, or to whatever extent they can, but should the judge decide that it is applicable, even at that stage, that section can be applied, right? So 498A is not closed to this woman. And there's a lot that is said about the misuse of Section 498A. And there is a very small sliver of the population that does do so. But there are huge swaths of populations of women that are being abused and slapped and humiliated and subjected to cruelty in this way. And those are looked at with a jaundiced eye because of the sliver of misuse. And this is not done when, for example, Section 420 is misused or when other provisions are misused. So that is something that our society really, really needs to self-correct on.
And why would that be?
Because it's
why
going
would
down
that
the
be?
drain.
Why would that be? Karuna, why would be? I mean, I know Deepika, Deepika is also waiting, but Karuna, you spoke about not being misused. Why would that not be misused?
Legal terrorism. Because there has been no judgment by the Supreme Court where they had to categorically say that
Deepika, I'll come to you. Deepika, I'll come to you. I will come to you, Deepika. You will get your time to speak. Let Karuna just explain this. We are not here versus one person versus the other. We are trying to understand something from the different dimensions, different legal principles, different gender prisms. So allow Karuna Nundy to finish and I will come to you, Deepika, for sure. Karuna, go ahead. You were talking about two sections not being misused compared to 498A. Why?
No, I was saying something slightly different. I was saying that, look, in any provision of criminal law or any provision of law, there will be use and there will be misuse, right? In any provision. So let me give you an example of a section that is misused quite a lot. This is Section 420 on cheating. So you ask most people that when a debt is not paid, for example, right? And only a civil case is maintainable, and a suit is potentially going to go on for 20 years, and they want to cut it short and they want to put some pressure on the other side. by bringing a criminal provision and filing an FIR. Then sometimes they will cite Section 420 and they will cite Section 503, they will cite criminal breach of trust, and they will say that, look, this person from the beginning did not intend to pay me, and or that they got my money or my valuables in their possession, and then they converted that and they decided not to pay and to return it, right?
Okay.
They decided to
All
convert
right.
it.
Okay.
Now, that misuse is not spoken of very much. The point is that you don't shut down, you don't get rid of the provision, and you don't stop looking at genuine cheating cases, and you don't stop enforcing the law because a small sliver of people are misusing it. You act against those people who are misusing it. What has happened with 498A? Because of the misogynist backlash against women asserting themselves, is that that backlash has become hugely overbroad. And so very legitimate cases like women being beaten in public, women being beaten in private, women committing suicide because there is that kind of cruelty that is happening to them is getting missed, right? Because people are saying, no, it's being misused, and it's not for the most part.
Okay, all right. Deepika, I know you want to respond to what Karuna is saying, but also it's important, and quite frankly, I mean, when we look at the history of patriarchy, when we look at the history of how India and the world across has evolved, or is evolving for that matter, and the lopsided balance or imbalance of justice and the brunt of what most have borne seems extremely one-sided, and it's tilted towards the women. However, there's one thing in today's world that we would want to assert very clearly: slapping anybody is unacceptable. Physical abuse of any sort is unacceptable, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. There is no differentiation in this case. But it's also, I mean, to be very honest to our viewers and everybody who's watching, if it was vice versa in the court today, if it was a woman who was slapping a man and if he had gone to the court and the court had said something like this, sure, that would also have been a point of debate, because physical assault, slapping is unacceptable for anyone. Deepika, would you want to respond to what Karuna is talking? Because one of the big point of views that you do come from is the misuse of certain sections. Now, in the light of what really is happening and giving an understanding, we don't really know what happened in that court, but that's for the trials to unfold. But vis-a-vis with what happened, why would that be an issue for you? If at all 498 was brought in, would that be an issue for you?
Sneha, first of all, I would not want to respond to what Karuna said, but I would want to respond to this whole debate today, that the domestic violence debate gets reignited only when a judgment comes, when a judge observes something where the man is the accused. Just 2 days back, a man in Pune was stabbed by his wife in his hip, and he was bleeding, and the wife did not take him to the hospital. The man had earlier gone to the police, and police did not even register his complaint. And that's the reality of this patriarchal society that you talk about, that neither 498A nor 354, nor Domestic Violence Act recognizes men even as victims of domestic violence. Forget about their complaints being registered, right? So if I respond to your whole debate today, if a wife would have slapped a man in his public, no matter how much he was dragging his feet in the police, first of all, his FIR would not even get registered, because the police would say, dude, you please go. If your wife comes and files a 498A complaint, then we would take that case. Now, I also question your show today on the whole idea of domestic violence, Sneha, because
Deepika,
just today, Supreme Court has taken cognizance where a husband and his parents were dragged out of their house at 5:30 in the morning by a police officer, and that was a clear contempt of 41A CRPC. But the High Court just let that police officer go by a mere apology. Would a police officer who would have dragged a woman by his feet at 5:30 a.m., if that case would have gone to the High Court, do you think the High Court would have dared to let go a police officer by just an apology? I will also bring to you several cases right now, Sneha. Just yesterday's case where a father-in-law in Ghaziabad committed suicide because he was being threatened of false cases and he was being demanded 50 lakhs. You do not organize debates on these cases, Neha. That's the problem. How does I do becoming,
All right.
slap you too, or becomes a problem only when it's from a man to a woman? Why is it not debated on the news headlines when it is from a woman to a man? How many debates have we done on the rising
Okay.
number of husband murders, Neha? Every day there is a wife who is killing her husband along
Okay.
with a lover.
Deepika,
We are
all
reporting
right.
such cases every day,
Okay,
but
finish
they
your
don't
point,
raise
and I would want to respond to that. Otherwise, you would say that I will not allow you to speak. Please respond. Sorry? You said something?
Oh, I'm
Anyway,
sorry.
so
Is this
Deepika, I
Shamina?
get what you're saying, and I am. No, no. So, Deepika, I get what you're saying, and I understand the point that you're bringing out. To be fair, we don't even bring out every incident or debate every incident of violence against women either. For the four
absolutely, Sneha.
instances that you
The
did count
behavior
on
is
air,
that
there
domestic
are
violence. Let's
equivalent
understand
instances
domestic
on the
violence
other
not
side.
actually
Not
exists.
When
equivalent.
you spoke, I did not
Much
interrupt you,
greater.
Deepika.
And that's the
When you
point.
spoke, Deepika, I did not interrupt, Deepika. Let's have a conversation here. It is not just for the three of us to prove a point here. It's for us to drive perspectives and understandings to audiences that are beyond us. Let's have a conversation, please. I invite you to have a conversation, Deepika, and be open to others as well because you have been heard. Now, having said what I said, I don't want to take away from what I was saying. I just end it right there. There are ample instances both ways, but debates are not organized when every such incident happens. What happened in the court today is important to be understood from the legal prism, whether it is something that may happen to a man or a woman. Karuna, how would you respond to what Deepika is saying? I don't want to make it into the you and me and those arguments of man and woman, but legally, how is this to be looked at? Is the legal structure lopsided? Is the legal structure towards the woman, backing the woman, protecting the woman more when you come to the man? And is there a reason for that prism in particular?
I think the point you make is important. Let us, and that, increasingly in our world today, we don't have enough conversations about the goal that we all seek, presumably, which is justice, right? Now, let us take a step back and let's look at data. Let us look at the data, the National Family Health Survey data, which is a proxy that a lot of people use reliably when crimes are not registered, but violence is being committed. Because sometimes, very often, people don't register crimes, whether they are men or women, when they are being beaten at home because of the idea of privacy in the family. And in this situation, in the tiny, tiny minority of cases where the man is being beaten by a woman, the patriarchy also steps in and bars that man from complaining because people might laugh at him. The community might laugh at him and say that, well, what were you doing? And what, naamard hai ki uski wife usko peet raha hai, right? Is it right when anyone beats anyone? Obviously not. But what is it that's happening today? Because let's say about 7 or 8 years ago, this began, a man suffering from, say, 498A or from other, 498A in particular, that really sort of caught people's imagination because of the tiny minority of false cases, is a man bites dog situation, right? Because people were talking about women and women's rights and violence against women, the media picked up on it. So what started happening and what is happening to this day, and I invite you all to track it. Let us look at data. Let us not just look at the odd incident, one incident here, one incident there. Let's look at hundreds of incidents and put them together. And let us look at the proportion that is covered by the media, violence against women, and let us look at the proportion of false cases that is covered by the media. There's a huge disproportionate focus on false cases. It has made the judiciary, even across the board, veer towards looking at any genuine case by a woman of cruelty and violence with an eye of suspicion. Now, this, to some extent,
Okay,
is
Karuna, I'm
being
just left with
corrected,
only 2
but there are
minutes.
many
So
judges
allow
that
me,
are looking at the actual
Karuna,
facts
allow
of the
me.
case.
Your point is well taken. Allow me to just go into Deepika. I'm barely left with any time. Deepika, please go ahead.
It is just so sad to hear a complete, misrepresentation of this entire issue. There hasn't been any other provision under the IPC in which more than 2 million
Respond to the facts.
have been
Okay,
arrested.
Deepika, I have one question for you. How would you look at the fact that
is when there is a debate on women's issues? Miss Karuna Nundy, basically
Okay,
the debates are all
Deepika.
about women's issues, and then we basically come and talk about false cases. If you want to talk about data, please
Okay,
tell me how many
Deepika,
debates
just for your
We do not just
perspective,
speak for
how
women's
would you
issues, ma'am.
look
We speak
at
for justice.
instances? No,
Justice
hold on.
across
Just
the
a minute,
board.
just a minute.
And I believe that patriarchy serves neither
Deepika,
men nor
Deepika,
women nor queer
Deepika,
people.
Deepika.
It serves nobody.
Deepika, Deepika Karuna, Deepika Karuna, Deepika Karuna, Deepika Karuna. Hear me out, hear me out. Last question to Deepika. Deepika, how would you respond? And it's important to understand your perspective on this as well. And that's why I'm asking you, Deepika. How would you respond to the imageries that are often drawn in Bollywood movie? How would you look at that? And then possibly bring in your perspective, whether we look at movies like Animal or, there are so many movies that are there, including Thappad. How would you respond to that? How would you bring in the prism that you come from? And I barely have any time. So if you could just sum it up quickly.
Are you asking me?
Yes, Deepika, it is exactly for you. Yes, because you are extremely passionate about this.
Yeah. Whether it is domestic relationship or it is any interpersonal relationship, violence is not okay. Domestic violence happens on both the sides. There are women who are abusive and there are men who are abusive. It is the person who is the victim of domestic violence that needs protection. Unfortunately, in our country, the men are not recognized as victims under any of the gender-based provisions. And as far as women like, as far as movies like Animal or Thappad is concerned, I absolutely condemn the degradation of women through movies like that, and it's absolutely not acceptable. But let's not forget the fact.
Okay, I'm being told to really close the show. We are totally off time. Karuna as well as Deepika, thank you for coming in, bringing in perspectives. I do hope we have generated enough conversation and thought behind the 3 very important articles that need to be seen from different lens, different prisms, different understandings, particularly through the legal view. This is something that needs far more dialogues from as many aspects that we can. Thank you very much for joining us.